Two cops thought they'd spotted a criminal. What they saw was a black man stepping out of a luxury car, and that alone made their blood boil. They didn't ask questions. They didn't check facts. They waited until nightfall, came back with gasoline, and lit his Lamborghini on fire. Flames in the dark, fueled by nothing but hate. They laughed as they drove away. But the next morning, the man whose life they tried to burn walked into their department, wearing captain's bars, calm, powerful, and fully aware. Now he's not just their superior, he's the man leading the investigation into his own attempted targeting. And the question is, will he bury them or redeem them? The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Main Street as officers Dale Mercer and Travis Klein cruised in their patrol car. Dale drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his swagger evident even while seated. "Another day, keeping the peace," Dale said with a smirk. "Making sure everybody stays in their proper place, right, Travis?" Travis nodded half-heartedly, staring out the passenger window at the familiar storefronts. The small town's downtown area was quiet, with just a few shoppers strolling the sidewalks and the regular crowd at Jimmy's diner. The purr of a powerful engine drew their attention. A gleaming black Lamborghini rolled smoothly into the small parking lot near the coffee shop. The afternoon sun glinted off its pristine paint job. Dale's casual smile vanished as a well-dressed black man stepped out. The man wore a perfectly tailored dark blazer and crisp white shirt. His movements were unhurried and composed. "No way," Dale muttered, his jaw tightening. "That car's got to be hot." "What makes you say that?" Travis asked, though he already knew the answer. "Come on," Dale scoffed. "A guy like that doesn't earn this kind of ride. Not legally, anyway." He pulled their cruiser to the curb across the street, throwing the car into park. Travis shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The man didn't look like a criminal. He carried himself with quiet dignity, stopping to hold the coffee shop door for an elderly woman. "Run the plates," Dale ordered, his eyes never leaving the Lamborghini. Travis typed the number into their computer. The Yamaha's results popped up quickly. Registration current, insurance valid, no alerts or flags of any kind. "It's clean," Travis said. "Everything checks out." "Too clean," Dale muttered. "That's what makes me suspicious. Nobody's record is that perfect." They watched as the man emerged from the coffee shop carrying two cups. Outside Jimmy's diner, he approached an elderly veteran, old Mr. Peterson, who always wore his Korean War veteran cap. The man from the Lamborghini offered him one of the coffees with a respectful nod. Mr. Peterson's weathered face broke into a smile as they chatted. The conversation looked friendly, natural. The man then got back into his car and drove slowly to the roadside memorial a block away. The small collection of flags and flowers marked the spot where two local service members had died in a car accident after returning from deployment. He stepped out again, reaching into his jacket pocket. Travis leaned forward, tension in his shoulders, but the man only withdrew a small American flag. With careful, almost reverent movements, he placed it among the others. Travis felt his certainty wavering. Everything about this man's behavior spoke of respect and consideration, not the actions of someone with something to hide. "I don't know, Dale," Travis said hesitantly. Maybe we should." "What?" Dale cut him off sharply. "Let people think they can just walk in here, flash money around, act like they own the place." The rest of their patrol passed in tense silence. As the sun began to set, they pulled into the station parking lot for end of shift. Dale threw the car into park with more force than necessary. "Meet me back here tonight," Dale said, his voice low and hard. "We're going to teach him a lesson." Travis's stomach clenched. He looked at his partner's face, a face he'd trusted through countless shifts, and saw something ugly there now. But the thought of standing alone, of losing his place in the brotherhood of the Force, made his throat tight with fear. He swallowed hard and gave a small nod, hating himself even as he did it. Dale's smile returned, sharp and satisfied. "That's my partner. Tonight we show him how things work in our town." Travis stared at his hands, unable to meet Dale's eyes. The weight of what was coming settled over him like a shadow, but he couldn't find the courage to speak up. The need to belong, to keep his place in the only world he knew, won out over the sick feeling in his gut. The sound of Dale's car door slamming made him jump. Through the windshield, he watched his partner stride away, already planning whatever cruel lesson lay ahead. Travis sat there alone as the parking lot grew darker, torn between what he knew was right and what felt safe. The midnight air bit cold and sharp as Dale's pickup truck rumbled into the empty police station parking lot. Travis stood waiting in the shadows, hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. His breath came out in nervous white puffs. "Get in," Dale ordered through the passenger window, "and keep your head down." Travis climbed into the warm cab, the leather seat creaking beneath him. "What exactly are we doing, Dale? This doesn't feel right." "Protecting our people." Dale's voice carried that self-righteous tone he used when justifying things. "Someone's got to send a message." They drove through empty streets, past darkened shop windows and quiet homes. The town slept peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. Every few blocks, Travis would shift in his seat and open his mouth like he wanted to speak, but Dale's stern profile kept him silent. They found the Lamborghini exactly where they expected, parked on a peaceful residential street, its sleek black shape gleaming under a single street lamp. Dale killed the engine and sat for a moment, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. "Last chance to back out," he said, but his tone made it clear that wasn't really an option. Travis's throat felt dry. "Maybe we should think this through." But Dale was already moving, slipping out of the truck with practiced silence. He carried something in his hand, a gas can, Travis realized with growing horror. This wasn't just about sending a message anymore. The night air seemed to freeze in Travis's lungs as he watched Dale approach the expensive car. Everything felt surreal, like a bad dream he couldn't wake up from. Dale's movements were quick and efficient as he splashed liquid across the hood and down the sides. "Dale, stop," Travis whispered hoarsely, finally finding his voice. But it was too late. The match flared bright in the darkness. For a split second, Travis saw Dale's face illuminated, jaw set, eyes hard with cruel satisfaction. Then the flame dropped. The fire caught with a soft whoosh that seemed to suck all the air from the street. Orange flames licked up the pristine paint, spreading with hungry intensity. The heat hit Travis's face like a physical blow, making him stumble backward. Dale's hand clamped around his arm, yanking him toward their waiting vehicle. "Move!" he hissed. They peeled away from the curb, tires squealing slightly on the asphalt. In the rearview mirror, Travis watched the growing inferno reflect off nearby windows. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Stop looking so guilty," Dale snapped. "We did what needed to be done." Morning arrived with wailing sirens and the acrid smell of burned rubber and metal. By sunrise, a crowd had gathered around the blackened shell of what used to be a $100,000 car. Neighbors stood in their bathrobes, holding up phones to record the scene while police tape fluttered in the breeze. At the station, Dale played his part perfectly. He stood in the break room, coffee cup in hand, voice loud with manufactured outrage. "Who would do something like this?" he demanded to anyone who would listen. "In our town?" Travis forced himself to nod along, though his stomach churned with each word. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes, afraid they'd see the truth written all over his face. The rumors started immediately. Gang-related, some whispered. Insurance fraud, others suggested. A few blamed outsider trouble, their voices heavy with meaning. When the call came for morning briefing, Travis's legs felt like lead as he walked to the conference room. He slid into his usual seat, noticing how Dale sat up straighter, already preparing to perform more false concern about the incident. Chief Rogers cleared his throat at the front of the room. "Before we begin, I have an important announcement. As you know, our department has been working to strengthen community relations. Today, I'm pleased to introduce the person who will help lead that initiative, our new police captain." The door opened. Travis felt the blood drain from his face. Dale's coffee cup clattered against the table. Isaiah Grant walked in, wearing the same calm expression they'd seen yesterday. His captain's bars gleamed on his collar. He moved with quiet confidence to the front of the room, his gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. When his eyes reached Dale and Travis, they lingered for just a moment, long enough to send ice down Travis's spine. There was something in that look, something that said he knew exactly who they were. "Good morning," Isaiah's voice filled the suddenly silent room. "I look forward to working with each of you to build a stronger, more trusted department." He paused, and Travis felt sweat break out on his forehead. "As my first order of business," Isaiah continued evenly, "there will be an internal review of last night's incident." Dale's face had gone gray. Travis gripped the edge of his chair, feeling the room spin slightly. Their new captain, the man whose car they had just destroyed, now held their careers, their futures, in his hands. And judging by the quiet steel in his voice, he knew exactly what they had done. The locker room hallway felt smaller than usual as Dale grabbed Travis's arm, yanking him behind a row of metal doors. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Dale's face as he leaned in close. "Not a word," Dale hissed, his fingers digging into Travis's sleeve. "We act normal, like nothing happened. Got it?" Travis's face had taken on a sickly greenish tint. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the cool air conditioning. "But he doesn't know anything," Dale cut him off. "We clean up everything from last night. The gloves, the gas can, all of it. It never happened." Across the room, through the glass partition, they could see Captain Grant speaking with Chief Morris. Isaiah's voice carried just enough for them to catch fragments. "Thorough review. Community trust. Fresh start." Travis's stomach churned. The new captain's presence was like a weight pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. He watched as Isaiah requested the incident. File and first officer reports, his manner professional and contained. The drive to the burn site was quiet. Isaiah parked his department-issued vehicle a respectful distance from the blackened shell of the Lamborghini. The acrid smell of melted metal and scorched leather hung in the morning air. He stood very still, hands in his pockets, looking at what remained. The smell triggered something deeper than the present moment. A memory of Sarah's laugh, bright and clean, filling the car on that spring afternoon. They'd just left the doctor's office with another round of discouraging news, but she'd turned to him and said, "We keep going, Isaiah, no matter what. Promise me." The promise had carried them through 3 more years, until cancer finally took her. Now, standing in front of the burned car they'd restored together, Isaiah closed his eyes. His lips moved in a silent prayer, not for vengeance, but for the wisdom to handle this right. Back at the station, Isaiah gathered the department for proper introductions. His voice was steady as he laid out his expectations. 3 simple rules, he said, making eye contact around the room. First, honesty in all things. Second, body cameras stay on during every interaction. Third, every citizen deserves our respect. No exceptions. Officers shifted in their seats. Some nodded, others stared at their notepads. "I'm scheduling a community listening session for next week," Isaiah continued. "This department serves the whole town. We need to hear from everyone." Dale's pen pressed so hard against his paper that the tip tore through. Travis couldn't stop his leg from bouncing under the desk. After the meeting, Isaiah called Officer Maya Chen into his office. She was new to the force, eager and sharp-eyed. The morning light, through the blinds, cast stripes across her clean uniform as she stood at attention. "Officer Chen," Isaiah said, gesturing to a chair, "I'd like you to help coordinate the arson investigation review." Maya's eyes widened slightly. "Yes, sir. Of course. Details matter," Isaiah told her, his expression serious but kind. "And so does integrity. I need someone who understands both." From his desk across the bullpen, Dale watched the interaction through narrowed eyes. His jaw clenched tight enough to make a muscle jump in his cheek. The rookie was smart, too smart, and now she had the captain's ear. Maya left Isaiah's office with a stack of folders and a determined set to her shoulders. As she passed Dale's desk, he caught the glint of purpose in her eyes. The net was forming, and Dale could feel it closing in, thread by careful thread. The morning ticked on, filled with the usual sounds of a police station. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, coffee cups scraping across desks. But underneath it all ran a current of tension, like electricity before a storm. Isaiah moved through the space with quiet authority, speaking to dispatchers, reviewing protocols, learning names. Travis kept his head down, trying to focus on paperwork, but his hands shook every time he reached for his coffee mug. The words on his computer screen blurred together. Each time the captain's footsteps passed nearby, his heart jumped into his throat. Dale maintained his facade of confidence, but his eyes followed Isaiah's every move. When the captain stopped to study the department's community outreach board, empty except for a few faded notices, Dale's pen snapped in his grip, sending blue ink spreading across his desk like a stain. The morning crawled toward noon, heavy with unspoken words and unavoidable truth. Isaiah's presence seemed to fill every corner of the station, not with intimidation, but with something harder to fight. Quiet, unwavering purpose. Maya began her work methodically, spreading photographs and reports across a conference room table. Each document was a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, would tell its own story, whether Dale and Travis were ready for it or not. The morning sun filtered through the station's windows, catching dust motes in its beams. The acrid smell of smoke still clung to everything, a reminder of what happened just hours ago. Officer Maya Chen sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of paper and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. She pulled Dale's and Travis's incident reports closer, her dark eyes scanning each line carefully. Something felt off. The timestamps were too neat. Every event recorded at exactly 15 or 30-minute marks. That wasn't how real life worked. Real incidents had messy times like 9:23 or 2:47. Maya grabbed a yellow highlighter and marked another oddity. In describing their patrol route, they'd left out where they'd parked during their observation period. The phrase "maintained standard surveillance" appeared in both reports, word for word, as if they'd practiced saying it together. "That's weird," she muttered, reaching for the dispatch logs. Her fingers traced down columns of times and codes, stopping at a 20-minute gap where no radio contact was recorded. She circled it in bright pink. Outside her office window, voices rose from the station lobby. A small crowd had gathered, some angry, others defensive. Maya could hear snippets of their argument floating up. "It's a hate crime, plain and simple," someone shouted. "Maybe if he wasn't showing off with that fancy..." "Carter," another voice countered. The front door opened and Captain Grant stepped out. The arguing stopped. He stood there, straight-backed but not stiff, his eyes meeting each person's gaze. "I understand you're all concerned," he said, his voice steady and clear. "I want you to know this case will be handled properly. No shortcuts, no special treatment, good or bad. That's my promise to this community." A few people nodded. Others crossed their arms, but they listened. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Maya watched Captain Grant check his watch and head to his car. She knew where he was going, the evening prayer circle at First Baptist. She'd seen it on his schedule. The small church sat on Cherry Street, its white steeple catching the last rays of sunset. Inside, wooden pews gleamed with decades of polish, and stained glass cast colored shadows on the floor. Mrs. Evelyn Hart, her silver hair neatly styled and her cardigan buttoned against the evening chill, looked up as Isaiah entered. "I saw you at the memorial yesterday," she said, rising from her seat in the prayer circle. "You placed that beautiful flag." Isaiah nodded, surprised she'd noticed. "Please join us," she said, patting the empty chair beside her. The other church members, mostly older folks with kind faces, shifted to make room. What struck Isaiah was what Evelyn didn't say. No mention of the burned car splashed across the local news, no awkward questions about insurance or investigations. Instead, she looked at him with gentle concern and asked, "How are you holding up, dear? Moving to a new town isn't easy." Isaiah felt something in his chest loosen slightly. "I'm taking it day by day, ma'am. That's all any of us can do." She nodded, her blue eyes twinkling. "And please, call me Evelyn." The prayer circle was simple and sincere. They prayed for the sick, for children heading to college, for rain for the farmers. When someone mentioned guidance for our police department, there was no judgment in their voices, just hope. As the meeting ended and people gathered their Bibles and handbags, Evelyn walked with Isaiah to the church steps. The evening air was soft with approaching spring, carrying the scent of newly bloomed dogwood. She touched his arm lightly. "We have a veterans' breakfast tomorrow morning at the community center. 7:30. Would you join us?" Isaiah looked at this woman who had offered friendship without demanding his story first. "I'd be honored," he said. Evelyn squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone her age. "Good. Sometimes the best answer to darkness is simply showing up, don't you think?" The truth of her words settled over him like a warm blanket. Isaiah watched her walk to her car, where another church member waited to drive her home. He stood there a moment longer, choosing to let this moment of connection outweigh the bitterness of recent events. Inside the quiet church, the candles still flickered on the altar, tiny flames that didn't destroy. They illuminated. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the church basement as Isaiah Grant stepped inside. The smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around him like a warm blanket. Round tables dotted the room, each one hosting little clusters of veterans sharing stories over steaming mugs and plates of scrambled eggs. Isaiah had left his police captain's uniform jacket in the car, choosing instead a crisp blue button-down shirt. He wanted them to see him as a person first, not just a badge. "Morning, Captain Grant," Evelyn Hart called out, waving from near the coffee station. Her silver hair caught the light as she made her way over. "So glad you could join us." Several heads turned, conversations pausing. Isaiah noticed the mix of expressions: curiosity, uncertainty, and a few frowns. He'd seen that look before, that careful sizing up that came with being the new face in a tight-knit group. "Everyone," Evelyn announced, her voice carrying the authority that came from years of organizing these breakfasts. "I'd like you to meet Isaiah Grant. He served 2 tours overseas before joining the police force. These days he's still serving, just wearing a different uniform." A few veterans nodded in recognition. One raised his coffee mug in greeting. Isaiah smiled and gave a small wave, keeping his body language open and relaxed. At a corner table, Travis Klein picked at his eggs, trying to look busy with his community engagement assignment. But his eyes kept drifting to Isaiah, watching how the new captain moved through the room with quiet confidence. "All for show," Dale muttered from the chair beside him, playing the humble hero act. He stabbed at his pancakes like they'd personally offended him. Isaiah made his way through the room, stopping to chat here and there. He didn't push conversations or try to dominate them. Instead, he listened. Really listened, as old soldiers shared memories of bases and battles from decades past. Halfway through breakfast, Mr. Wilson, a Korean War veteran well into his 80s, tried to stand up from his chair. His legs wobbled, arthritis-twisted hands gripping the edge of the table. Without drawing attention to it, Isaiah smoothly appeared at his side, offering a steady arm. "Here you go, sir," Isaiah said softly, helping Mr. Wilson find his balance. "Much obliged, son," Mr. Wilson whispered, patting Isaiah's shoulder. The small gesture rippled through the room. Several veterans who had been keeping their distance now looked at Isaiah with new eyes. Even Travis felt his throat tighten as he watched. The guilt he'd been carrying since the night of the fire burned even hotter in his chest. As plates were cleared and coffee cups emptied, Isaiah helped stack chairs and wipe down tables. He worked alongside everyone else, no special treatment expected or given. Travis hung back by the church doors as people filed out. Pastor Green stood nearby, greeting folks as they left. The weight of Travis's secret felt like it might crush him. The words bubbled up. "Pastor, I need to tell you something. I did something terrible." But then he felt Dale's presence behind him, solid as a wall. Travis's courage crumbled. He forced his face into what he hoped was a casual smile and hurried past the pastor, choosing the familiar safety of silence over the frightening unknown of truth. Dale clapped him on the shoulder as they walked to their patrol car. "See? All an act. Don't let it get to you." But Travis couldn't shake the image of Isaiah steadying that old veteran, or the genuine warmth in his voice when he asked about their service. It didn't feel like an act at all. It felt like watching a good man try to build bridges while Travis helped burn them down. The morning sun was fully up now, making the church windows glitter. Travis climbed into the passenger seat, the weight of his choices sitting heavy in his stomach. He'd had a chance to do the right thing, to finally speak up. Instead, he'd let fear win again. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the briefing room windows as Isaiah stood at the podium. His presence was calm but firm, like an oak tree that had weathered storms before. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice carrying to every corner. "Let's talk about how we serve this community." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as 30 pairs of eyes focused on him. Some were curious, others guarded. In the back row, Dale's arms were crossed tight against his chest. "Starting today, body cameras stay on during all citizen interactions," Isaiah explained. "No exceptions without proper documentation. And patrol logs need times, locations, and details filled out completely." Officer Chen sat near the front, her notebook open, pen moving steadily across the page. Travis kept shifting in his seat, his collar suddenly too tight. "We're also opening our doors wider," Isaiah continued. "Community members will be invited to join ride-alongs. They need to see who we are and how we work." Trust grows in daylight, not shadows. A few veteran officers nodded slowly. Others studied their boots. The tension in the room felt thick enough to touch. "Questions?" Isaiah asked. Silence answered him, broken only by the scratch of Maya's pen. Dale's eyes darted to Travis like a snake sizing up its prey. The message was clear without words. Stay quiet. Stay in line. Travis looked away, his hands clenched under the table. As officers filed out, Dale caught up with Sergeants Miller and Rodriguez near the water cooler. His voice carried just loud enough for nearby ears. "Can you believe this?" Dale's words dripped with disgust. "He's painting us all like bad guys, making us look dirty to make himself look clean." Miller frowned, uncomfortable. Rodriguez took a long drink of water. "Think about it," Dale pressed. "His fancy car gets torched, and suddenly he's here to fix us. Awful convenient timing. Maybe this whole thing is just smoke and mirrors." Down the hall, Maya sat surrounded by paper trails. Her desk lamp made a small island of light as she spread out patrol logs, comparing times and routes with careful eyes. Her finger traced patterns only she could see. "Officer Mercer?" she called out as Dale passed. "I need the GPS logs from patrol units for that night, just checking everything matches up." Dale stopped cold. His shoulder, muscles bunched like fists. "Why?" The word came out sharp enough to cut. "Standard procedure," Maya replied evenly. "Captain's orders. Thoroughness matters." Dale's face flushed red. He opened his mouth, then snapped it shut, and stalked away. The station grew quieter as evening settled in. Isaiah was heading to his car when Sergeant Thompson, a 20-year veteran with steel-gray hair, stepped out of the shadows. "Captain," Thompson said, quietly. "Got a minute?" They moved away from the building where the parking lot lights made orange pools on the asphalt. "Some folks here," Thompson chose his words carefully, "they don't like change. Been doing things their way a long time. Might push back hard." He met Isaiah's eyes. "Watch yourself, sir, that's all I'm saying." Isaiah nodded, his expression giving nothing away. "Thank you, Sergeant." Thompson headed back inside while Isaiah stood for a moment, watching the streetlights flicker to life against the darkening sky. His posture remained straight, his eyes alert but unafraid, like a man who had faced darkness before and knew how to stand his ground. The afternoon sun warmed the community center's weathered brick walls as Travis pulled into the parking lot. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, knuckles white with tension. He'd been dreading this assignment all morning. Through the glass doors he could see Isaiah setting up folding chairs in a circle. Maya Chen was already there, helping some teens arrange a snack table with cookies and juice boxes. Travis took a deep breath and forced himself to walk inside. "Officer Klein," Isaiah said with a nod. "Thanks for coming. Could you help Michael with the basketball setup?" He gestured toward a skinny 13-year-old struggling with a portable hoop. Travis moved automatically to help, surprised by how normal it felt. The kid didn't flinch or run. He just said thanks and started explaining where the hoop should go. Within 30 minutes, the community center hummed with life. About 20 kids, ranging from 11 to 17, filled the chairs. Some wore basketball jerseys. Others had on hoodies despite the warm day. A quiet girl with glasses handed out paper cups of lemonade. Isaiah stood in the circle, but he didn't tower over them. Instead, he pulled his chair closer, leaning in like he was part of a family conversation. "First," he said, "I want to thank you all for coming. This isn't about lectures or rules. This is about hearing your truth." His voice carried the same steady warmth it always did. "So tell me, what makes you nervous when you see a police car in your neighborhood?" The silence felt heavy at first. Travis shifted in his chair, watching faces change as kids worked up their courage. A boy in the back, maybe 15, raised his hand slowly. "My dad works late shifts at the hospital," he said. "Sometimes he has to walk home in the dark. Last month, somebody broke into Mrs. Johnson's house on our street. But Dad said, we couldn't call 911 because they might think he did it just because—" The boy's voice cracked. "Just because of how he looks." Travis felt the words like a physical blow. He remembered Dale's voice the night they saw Isaiah. "A guy like that doesn't earn this." The same ugly assumption, the same fear being passed down to kids who should feel safe calling for help. More stories came. A girl talked about her little brother being followed in stores. A boy described how his mother taught him to keep his hands visible if police stopped him. Each story landed somewhere, deep in Travis's chest, making it harder to breathe. Maya took notes, her face serious but kind. Isaiah listened to every word, asking gentle follow-up questions, never dismissing their fears. "Your feelings matter," Isaiah told them, "and they're going to help us do better. Real change starts with truth." After the session, most kids stayed for basketball. Their laughter echoed off the gym walls, the earlier tension melting away as they played. Travis helped clean up, gathering empty cups and moving chairs back to the storage room. Isaiah worked alongside him, stacking chairs with careful efficiency. The silence between them felt different now, less hostile, more weighted with things unsaid. "Captain," Travis started, his voice rough, About your car. I'm sorry about what happened." Isaiah paused, looking at Travis with those steady eyes that seemed to see right through him. "The car was never the point," he said softly. "The heart behind it was." The words hit Travis like another punch to the gut, because Isaiah was right. It wasn't about metal and paint. It was about hatred and fear, and the damage they do to real people with real lives. Walking back to his patrol car, Travis's foot kicked something small and metallic. He bent down and found a charred key fob, partially melted but still recognizable. It must have been thrown clear during the fire, forgotten in the cleanup. His hands shaking, Travis picked it up and slipped it into his pocket. The metal felt hot against his leg, like it was burning through the fabric with the weight of his guilt. Once inside his car, the walls he'd built finally crumbled. His chest heaved as tears came, not quiet ones, but the kind that shake your whole body. He covered his face with his hands, the key fob pressing into his palm like an accusation. In that moment, Travis saw himself clearly, not as a cop doing his duty, but as a man who'd let fear make him cruel. The kid's stories rang in his ears, mixing with the memory of flames and Isaiah's quiet dignity. The shame was overwhelming. The evening settled over the town like a soft blanket, bringing with it the kind of quiet that makes hearts speak more freely. Mrs. Evelyn Hart's modest house sat tucked away on Maple Street, its porch light glowing like a gentle beacon. The smell of homemade vegetable soup and fresh cornbread drifted through her screen door as Isaiah climbed the worn wooden steps. Come in," Evelyn called out, her voice warm and welcoming. "The soup's just right now." Isaiah ducked his head slightly as he entered the small kitchen, where everything looked loved and well used. Blue and white checkered curtains framed the window. Above the sink, and family photos lined the walls. A cross hung above the stove, watching over decades of meals and memories. "It smells wonderful, Mrs. Hart," Isaiah said, settling into a chair at her small kitchen table. "Just Evelyn, please." She ladled the steaming soup into 2 bowls, her movements precise despite her age. "And there's butter for the cornbread, the real kind, not that fancy spread they sell nowadays." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds being spoons against bowls and the tick-tock of an old clock on the wall. Isaiah hadn't realized how hungry he was until that first spoonful touched his lips. Evelyn watched him with knowing eyes, the kind that have seen enough life to recognize pain hiding behind composure. "You look tired, Isaiah," she said finally. "Been sleeping?" He shook his head slightly. "Not much since the fire," he admitted, his voice low but steady. Evelyn didn't push. She just nodded and buttered another piece of cornbread, letting the quiet do its work. The clock kept ticking, marking moments until truth found its way out. When Isaiah finally spoke again, his voice carried a tenderness that made Evelyn's heart ache. "That car," he started, then paused to gather himself. "Sarah, my wife, and I found it about 8 years ago. It was just a shell then, sitting in some collector's garage, forgotten." He smiled slightly at the memory. "I'd just gotten back from my last deployment. Things were hard. The transition back wasn't smooth. Sarah knew I needed something to focus on besides the memories." Evelyn reached across the table and patted his hand, encouraging him to continue. "We restored it together," Isaiah said. "Every single part. She'd read the manual out loud while I worked under the hood. When I'd get frustrated, she'd make me laugh." His eyes grew distant. "We made this promise to each other, that no matter what life threw at us, we'd rebuild. Keep going. Find joy again." He looked down at his bowl, his next words barely above a whisper. "When the cancer took her 3 years later, I couldn't sell it. That car carried her voice, her laughter, Every time I drove it, I could hear her saying, "See, we did it. We rebuilt." Evelyn's eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was strong. "You carry her grace in how you handle things, you know that?" Isaiah looked up, surprised. "I mean it," she continued, reaching for a tissue. "You can hold people accountable without letting hatred move into your heart. That's what you're doing, isn't it?" "Trying to," Isaiah nodded. "Justice matters, but cruelty doesn't heal anything." The phone rang then, making them both jump, slightly. Evelyn answered it, spoke briefly, then handed it to Isaiah. "It's Pastor Green," she said. Isaiah listened as the pastor explained about tomorrow night's town hall meeting. The tension in his shoulders told Evelyn it wasn't good news. When he hung up, Isaiah let out a long breath. "Could get ugly tomorrow night," he said. "Some people want answers I can't give yet. Others just want to stir up trouble." He looked at Evelyn's steady hands as she cleared their bowls, thought about Sarah's strength, about promises kept and healing earned. His decision came clear and firm. "I'll be there. I won't hide." Evelyn smiled, proud but not surprised. "That's the right choice," she said. "Truth stands tallest when times are hardest." The school gymnasium hummed with tension as people filed in, their footsteps echoing off the polished floors. Metal folding chairs scraped against wood as neighbors settled in, casting wary glances at each other across invisible lines that hadn't been there weeks ago. Isaiah Grant stood at the front, his uniform pressed crisp, his posture steady. The podium looked small against the backdrop of championship banners and school mascots. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. "Thank you all for coming," Isaiah began, his voice carrying to the back row without shouting. "I want to start with one promise. You deserve the truth and you deserve safety. Both of these things matter equally." A man in a plaid shirt shot up from his seat. "What about that fancy car getting torched? That's not safety." "My kids are scared to walk downtown now," a woman added from the middle section. "We never had these problems before outsiders started moving in," someone else called out. Isaiah didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just nodded, acknowledging each concern without feeding the fear behind it. "The investigation will follow facts, not assumptions," he repeated, calm as still water. "Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every detail matters. That's how we build trust, through thorough, transparent work." From her seat in the second row, Evelyn Hart watched faces shift in the crowd. Some softened at Isaiah's steadiness. Others hardened, as if his composure made them angrier. She noticed Travis Klein standing near the back wall, looking pale and unsettled. Evelyn stood slowly, her aged frame straight with dignity. "If I may speak," she said, her voice clear despite her years. The room quieted. Everyone knew Mrs. Hart. Everyone respected her presence. "I've lived in this town 63 years, she began. "I've seen good times and hard times, but what I've never seen is dignity being handed out based on skin color. That's not what my Harold fought for, God rest his soul, and that's not what this department stands for now." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several heads nodded. Even some of the angry faces looked down, chastened by her words. But then Dale Mercer rose from his seat wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Hart, we all respect you," he said smoothly. "And of course, everyone deserves dignity. But isn't it possible that Captain Grant is using this unfortunate incident to push through changes that might not be in our town's best interest?" The room tensed. Dale continued, his voice reasonable but loaded. "I mean, these new policies, these reforms, they started right after the fire, almost like it was convenient timing." More murmurs, this time uncertain. People shifted in their seats, looking between Dale and Isaiah. From her position, near the side door, Maya Chen watched Dale carefully. She saw the satisfied glint in his eye when people started whispering. She noticed how he kept checking his phone, as if waiting for something. Isaiah's response was measured. "Change isn't about convenience, Officer Mercer. It's about doing what's right when it's right. And right now, our community needs healing, not division." But Dale was already moving toward the exit, phone in hand, typing quickly. Maya's police instincts, honed through training and street work, fired warning signals. Something felt orchestrated about his performance. As the meeting continued, with more questions and careful answers, Maya slipped out quietly. She headed straight for the records room at the station, her mind racing through possibilities. The records room was cool and quiet, smelling of old paper and dust. Maya pulled up the street map where the Lamborghini had burned. She marked intersection points, traffic cameras, business security systems, anything that might have caught movement that night. Her finger stopped on a dot near the corner of Mason and Oak. The convenience store there had upgraded their security system last month. Their new cameras covered not just the storefront, but the whole intersection. "Please," she whispered, pulling up the filing system. "Please let them have. Save the footage." Her hands moved quickly through digital folders until she found it. A request form for external security footage, waiting to be signed. The camera's angle would have captured any vehicle passing through between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. the night of the fire. Maya printed the form, her heart beating faster. In the silence of the records room, she whispered, "Got you." It wasn't a brag or a threat. It was more like a prayer, a hope that truth would finally break through. She looked at the form in her hands, knowing it could change everything. Somewhere in those recorded hours, a patrol car might have passed when it shouldn't have been there. And if it did, the truth would finally have its proof. The Veterans Hall buzzed with activity as volunteers set up long tables for the holiday charity drive. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through tall windows, catching dust, motes in golden beams. Isaiah Grant arrived before anyone else, his sleeves already rolled up. "Captain, let me help with those," called out Jimmy, the hall's caretaker, watching Isaiah lift a heavy box of canned goods. "I've got it," Isaiah said with an easy smile. "And please, just Isaiah today." More volunteers trickled in, carrying decorations and donation boxes. Mrs. Evelyn Hart and Pastor Green stationed themselves by the entrance, greeting each person with warm welcomes. The pastor's deep voice carried across the room as he blessed the gathering. "Such a wonderful turnout," Evelyn said, patting a young mother's hand as she dropped off wrapped presents. Travis Klein hung back near the coffee station, his uniform feeling too tight around his neck. He watched Isaiah move through the crowd with natural grace, stopping to chat with everyone who crossed his path. A small boy, maybe 6 years old, tugged at his mother's sleeve and pointed to Isaiah's badge. Instead of brushing past, Isaiah knelt down to the child's level. "Would you like to see it?" Isaiah asked softly. The boy nodded, eyes wide. Isaiah unpinned his badge and let the child hold it carefully. "This means I promise to protect people. That includes you and your mum. Even bad guys," the boy whispered. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect," Isaiah said. "That's how we make things better." Travis turned away, his coffee bitter in his mouth. The hall filled quickly with townspeople dropping off donations. Isaiah thanked each person individually, remembering names, asking about family members. Near the memorial wall, he paused at a photo of a young Marine. Without fanfare, he raised his hand in a crisp salute, holding it for a full count. "That was my Tommy," an elderly woman said quietly, touching the frame. "3 tours in Afghanistan." Isaiah nodded. "He served with honor, ma'am." The exchange rippled through the crowd. Shoulders relaxed, smiles came easier. This was a leader who understood service and sacrifice. Then it happened. Mrs. Evelyn was helping sort through donation boxes when she suddenly swayed. Color drained from her face as she reached for the table edge. "Oh," she breathed, knees buckling. Isaiah moved, faster than anyone expected. He caught her arm, supporting her weight while pulling out a chair with his free hand. "Easy now," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Let's sit down for a moment." The room had gone silent. Someone gasped. "Someone call 911, Isaiah directed, but his tone remained calm. He kept his hand on Evelyn's shoulder, speaking quietly to her. "Take slow breaths with me, Mrs. Hart. That's right. The medics are coming, but we're going to sit here together until then." "So silly of me," Evelyn mumbled, trying to stand. "Not silly at all," Isaiah said firmly. "You've been on your feet for hours helping others. Now it's our turn to help you." His composure spread through the room like a settling blanket. Instead of panic, people moved with purpose. Someone brought water. Another person found a fan. Pastor Green held Evelyn's hand and prayed softly. When the IJI paramedics arrived, they found a situation well in hand. Isaiah gave them a clear report of what happened, never leaving Evelyn's side until they assured him she was stable, likely just dehydration and fatigue. As they helped Evelyn to the ambulance for a checkup, spontaneous applause broke out. Not the loud, showy kind, but the soft, genuine appreciation for quiet strength. Isaiah had shown them what real leadership looked like, not with speeches or power, but with gentle, unwavering care. Travis couldn't take it anymore. The guilt sat like stones in his stomach. He pushed through the door into the cold night air, gulping deep breaths. The stars above seemed to judge him. He turned toward the parking lot, determined to find Isaiah and confess everything. Going somewhere? Dale's voice was soft, but carried an edge sharp as broken glass. He stepped out of the shadows, moving close to Travis. "Dale, I can't—" Travis started. "Not a word." Dale's whisper cut like a knife. "You say anything, and I'll make sure everyone knows you were just as guilty. Your career, your reputation, gone. Is that what you want?" Travis's shoulders slumped. The moment of courage evaporated under Dale's threat, leaving only the familiar taste of shame. Inside the hall, the charity drive continued. Isaiah's quiet leadership had transformed the evening from obligatory charity to genuine community. But outside in the darkness, Travis stood frozen between truth and fear, while Dale's shadow loomed beside him like a prison wall. The morning sun filtered through the station windows, but its warmth didn't reach inside. The holiday spirit from last night's charity drive had vanished like frost in daylight. Councilman Peters strode through the front doors at 9 o'clock sharp, his leather shoes clicking against the tile floor. His smile was practiced and cold, like a salesman closing a bad deal. He adjusted his red tie and asked to see Captain Grant privately. In Isaiah's office, Peters settled into the chair without waiting for an invitation. "Captain, we need to discuss some concerns." He pulled out a folder stuffed with papers. "The community feels unsettled by all these rapid changes." Isaiah sat straight-backed, hands folded on his desk. Change often feels that way at first. These new policies, body cameras, ride-alongs, community oversight, they're creating tension. Peters leaned forward. "Maybe we should pause until things settle down. Accountability isn't seasonal, Councilman." Isaiah's voice stayed level. "It works best when it's consistent." Down the hall, Maya Chen stared at her computer screen in frustration. The email from Municipal Services made her stomach turn. Security footage unavailable due to technical malfunction. She grabbed her jacket and drove to City Hall, determination in every step. The records clerk, a tired woman named Barbara, barely looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Sorry, honey. System glitch that night. Backup files got overwritten in the standard 30-day cycle." Barbara shrugged. "Nothing I can do." Maya's hands clenched. The incident was less than 2 weeks. Sago, the 30-day cycle shouldn't matter. Computer problems. Barbara turned back to her puzzle. "You know how it goes." In the break room, Dale held court with 4 other officers. His voice carried just loud enough to travel. "Kind of convenient, isn't it? New captain shows up, fancy car gets torched, suddenly we need all these reforms." Officer Wilson frowned. "What are you saying? Insurance pays triple if it's a hate crime." Dale's words dripped poison. "Just saying, some people know how to work the system." Travis stood in the doorway, coffee cup shaking in his hand. "That's not—" he started. Dale's head snapped toward him. "You want to lose your badge too? Keep quiet and let things play out." Travis stumbled backward, shame burning his throat. At 2 o'clock, 2 internal affairs investigators arrived, wearing dark suits and grim expressions. They went straight to the chief's office. 20 minutes later, Isaiah was called in. The senior investigator, a woman with steel-gray hair, read from a formal letter. "Due to multiple complaints and pending inquiry into departmental procedures, you are placed on temporary administrative leave, effective immediately." Isaiah's face remained calm, but something in his eyes dimmed. He removed his badge with careful movements, like handling something fragile. The metal caught the afternoon light as he placed it on the chief's desk. Without a word of protest, Isaiah gathered his coat and walked through the station. Officers turned away, suddenly busy with paperwork or phones. Only Maya stood up at her desk, a silent witness to the wrongness of it all. Mrs. Evelyn Hart, bringing cookies to dispatch as she did every Tuesday, saw Isaiah leave. She reached for his arm, but he gently shook his head. This wasn't the time for comfort. Not yet. The glass doors closed behind him with a soft click. In the parking lot, Isaiah paused to look back at the station where he'd tried to build something better. His shoulders carried sorrow. but his spine stayed straight. He got into his personal car, not the gleaming Lamborghini that had started all this, but a simple sedan, and drove away. The setting sun painted the station windows orange, like the flames that had started this chain of events. Inside, Dale smirked at Travis across their desks. "See? The system works." But Travis wasn't looking at Dale. He was watching Maya Chen, who stood at the window with her fists clenched, watching justice drive away. The evening settled over Isaiah's modest home like a heavy blanket. He sat in his living room, the fading light casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. His uniform pants still pressed and crisp, but the empty space where his badge should be felt like a wound. On the side table, face down since the fire, lay a silver photo frame. Isaiah's hand trembled slightly as he turned it over. There she was, Sarah, his late wife, leaning against the restored Lamborghini. Her smile could light up the darkest day, and even now it pierced his heart. The car gleamed behind her, a testament to countless weekends spent together, rebuilding something broken into something beautiful. "Lord," he whispered, his voice barely disturbing the quiet, "I'm not asking for comfort. Just give me the strength to keep my heart soft when everything wants to make it hard." A gentle knock interrupted his prayer. Through the front window's sheer curtains, he saw Mrs. Evelyn Hart's familiar silhouette, a covered casserole dish in her weathered hands. "I hope you like chicken and dumplings," she said when he opened the door. No lectures about injustice, no outrage about his leave, just the warm smell of home-cooked food and understanding in her eyes. They sat in comfortable silence, the ticking clock marking time. Isaiah stared at his hands that had served in combat, helped rebuild communities, and now felt strangely empty without a badge. "Even when I do everything right," he finally said, his voice heavy with the day's weight, "when I serve with honor, follow every rule, show nothing but respect, I'm still suspect, still the first one they doubt." Evelyn placed her thin hand over his. "Then, let your steadiness be your sermon, Isaiah. Some messages aren't spoken, they're lived." Across town, Officer Maya Chen hunched over her desk, determination written across her face. The station was quiet at this hour, most officers gone home. Perfect. She pulled up the patrol GPS records again, cross-referencing them with system access logs. "If you deleted the footage," she muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard, "you had to leave footprints somewhere." The archive log appeared on her screen, a record of every person who accessed the security system the night the corrupted file vanished. Her eyes narrowed as one name appeared repeatedly: Dale Mercer. Timestamps showed multiple entries, each a few minutes apart. Not the pattern of someone checking footage, the pattern of someone erasing traces. Behind the station in the shadowy parking lot, Travis stood with his shoulders hunched against the cold. The charred item in his pocket, a partially melted keychain with a military medallion, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Dale's footsteps crunched on the gravel. His face, usually smug, now held something darker. He moved close, too close, forcing Travis to step back against his car. "Getting nervous, partner?" Dale's whisper carried venom. "Remember, if you open your mouth, I'll make sure everyone knows you acted alone. One confused rookie who couldn't handle change." His smile turned cruel. "Pick your future carefully." Travis gripped his car keys until they bit into his palm. The drive home felt endless, each streetlight illuminating the choice before him like spotlight moments. The keychain pressed against his leg through his pocket, a constant reminder that silence wasn't neutral anymore. Every minute he stayed quiet was another minute he chose to betray not just Isaiah, but everything the badge was supposed to mean. His headlights caught a church sign as he turned onto his street. The message board read, "Character is choosing right when no one is watching." Travis let out a shaky breath. But people were watching now, and the wrong choice was getting harder to live with every day. The morning sun had barely touched the station windows when Maya Chen slipped through the quiet hallways. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space as she made her way to her desk, determination written across her face. She powered up her computer, fingers moving quickly over the keyboard as she pulled up the archived access logs. The screen's glow illuminated her focused expression while she cross-referenced timestamps with the patrol GPS data she'd gathered earlier. "Got you," she whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she hit the print button. The printer hummed to life, spitting out page after page of damning evidence. Maya's heart raced as she saw it laid out in black and white. Dale Mercer's unit had been exactly where it shouldn't have been, exactly when the fire started. She gathered the papers with careful hands, sliding them into a manila folder. The weight of truth felt heavy in her grasp. Maya glanced at the clock. 6:45 a.m. Too early for regular channels, too important to wait. 20 minutes later, she pulled up to Isaiah's modest home. Her palms were sweating as she gripped the steering wheel, taking a deep breath before stepping out. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of someone's fresh-cut grass down the quiet street. Maya's knock was firm, but respectful. When Isaiah opened the door, he looked different without his uniform, more human in a simple grey sweater but no less commanding. Surprise flickered across his face at seeing her there in full uniform. "Officer Chen? Captain Grant, I'm sorry to come to your home, but this couldn't wait." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "May I come in?" He stepped aside, gesturing toward his kitchen table. Maya placed the folder down carefully, like handling evidence at a crime scene. "Captain, you were set up," she said, meeting his eyes, "and I think I know who did it." Isaiah sat down slowly, opening the folder with deliberate movements. His expression remained calm as he read, but his eyes darkened with each page he turned. Not with anger, with something deeper, more resolute. "Walk me through it," he said quietly. Maya pointed to the timestamps, the GPS coordinates, the access, logs showing Dale's digital fingerprints all over the missing security footage. "He thought he covered his tracks, sir, but systems keep backups of who accesses what, even if the original files disappear." Across town, Travis Klein's hands shook as he pushed open the heavy wooden door of Pastor Green's office. The morning light streamed through stained glass, casting colored shadows across his tear-stained face. "I need to tell you something," he choked out, barely making it to a chair before his legs gave out. Pastor Green's kind eyes showed no judgment as Travis began to speak. The words tumbled out like a dam breaking. The arson, the hatred that had driven it, the fear and shame that had kept him silent. "We burned his car," Travis sobbed. "But it wasn't just a car. The way he looked at it that morning at the memorial. We destroyed something precious, didn't we?" Pastor Green reached for his phone, dialing Evelyn's number with gentle urgency. When she arrived 15 minutes later, her presence filled the room with quiet strength. "You need to tell the investigators, Travis," she said firmly, taking his trembling hands in her steady ones. "Confession to us is only the first step." "They'll fire me," Travis whispered. "I might go to jail." "Yes," Pastor Green nodded. "But keeping this poison inside you is a worse prison." The afternoon sun was starting to soften when Travis found himself sitting at Evelyn's kitchen table, facing Isaiah Grant. The captain's presence felt different here, less like authority, more like gravity. Travis reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew something small and charred. With shaking fingers, he placed it on the table between them, a partially melted photo frame, the edge of a woman's smile still visible in one corner. Isaiah didn't reach for it. His eyes fixed on Travis's face instead, steady and deep as still water. "Tell the whole truth," Isaiah said quietly. "Then we'll face what comes." Travis wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, took a deep breath, and began to speak. The next morning dawned grey and chilly, matching the heavy mood as Isaiah, Maya, and Travis converged on the Internal Affairs building downtown. The hallway buzzed with fluorescent lights and the sharp scent of burnt coffee from a nearby break room. Every footstep echoed against the linoleum floors. Travis's hands wouldn't stop trembling. He kept wiping them on his pants, leaving damp marks on the fabric. He'd left his badge at home today, knowing he might never wear it again. That thought should have terrified him, but instead, it felt like the first honest thing he'd done in weeks. Maya carried a thick manila folder, her spine straight and professional. She'd triple-checked every document, every timestamp, every GPS coordinate. The evidence formed a clear path that led straight to Dale and Travis's patrol car that night. 2 investigators met them in a sterile conference room. The walls were bare except for a city seal and a clock that seemed to tick too loudly. Maya laid out her findings with methodical precision. "The access logs show Officer Mercer entered the record system at 11:47 p.m. on the night in question," she explained, spreading papers across the table. "The timing matches exactly with when the security footage disappeared, and here," she pointed to a GPS readout, Their patrol vehicle was stationary near the burn site for approximately 6 minutes during the estimated time of ignition. Travis sat with his shoulders curved inward, looking smaller than his usual self. When it was his turn to speak, his voice came out rough but steady. "I was wrong," he said, the words falling like stones. "We saw Captain Grant that afternoon, and Dale, Officer Mercer. He decided something wasn't right just because—" Travis swallowed hard. "Just because of how Captain Grant looked. We had no reason, no cause, just bias." He described the night in detail, Dale's angry whispers, the smell of gasoline, the way the flames had reflected in the car's perfect black paint. He didn't minimize his role or try to shift blame. Each admission seemed to straighten his spine a little more, as if truth was finally letting him stand up properly. "I was wrong," he repeated, and this time it sounded like a prayer. "I knew it was wrong when we did it, and I was too much of a coward to stop it, too worried about fitting in, about what Dale would say. But that's no excuse." Isaiah sat quietly through it all, his presence steady as a mountain. He'd removed his captain's bars during his leave, but his authority had never come from the insignia anyway. When Dale was brought in, his familiar smirk was firmly in place. He lounged in the chair, like this was all beneath him, right up until Maya started laying out the evidence. With each document, each timestamp, each piece of proof, his expression tightened. "This is ridiculous," Dale snapped, but his voice had gone up half an octave. "You're all just jumping on the political correctness train. 20 years on the force and suddenly I'm the bad guy because I don't bow down to—" "To what, Officer Mercer?" Isaiah's voice cut through the room, quiet but unmistakable. Dale's face twisted. The mask slipped, then shattered completely. "To people like you," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "Coming here with your fancy car and your fancy title, trying to change everything. This town was fine before you showed up. We knew how to handle things. We knew who belonged and who didn't." The words echoed down the hallway. Officers passing by stopped dead in their tracks. Through the conference room's windows, faces turned to stare, some shocked, others grimly unsurprised. The investigator's voice was ice cold. "Officer Mercer, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." Dale kept shouting as they led him away in handcuffs, his words growing more bitter and revealing with each step. Travis watched his former partner disappear, then accepted his own suspension papers with a bowed head. The charges would follow, but he'd face them standing in truth. Later that afternoon, sunlight finally broke through the clouds as Isaiah stood in the chief's office. The badge felt heavier as he pinned it back on, the metal catching the light. He gathered the department in the briefing room. Faces looked back at him, some ashamed, some relieved, some still uncertain. Isaiah's voice carried to every corner. "Accountability is not hatred," he said simply. "It's love for what we're supposed to be. Love for the oath we took and the people we serve. Today wasn't about winning or losing. It was about choosing who we are." The room stayed quiet, but something had shifted. Like a fever, breaking, like the first clean breath after smoke clears. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Main Street as life settled into its new rhythm. Isaiah's cruiser rolled past the coffee shop where everything had started, but the air felt different now, lighter somehow despite the weight of all that had happened. Inside the station, Maya Chen organized the last of the internal review files. Her commendation letter sat unopened on her desk. She hadn't even shown it to her parents. When Officer Wilson congratulated her, she just smiled and said, "I just did what was right, that's all." The new body cameras felt natural now, clicking on with each shift. Reports were clearer, more detailed. When citizens came to the front desk, they were met with eye contact and respect, not dismissal. Travis's empty locker had been cleared out last week. He'd faced the judge with the same quiet acceptance he'd shown in confession, pleading guilty to arson and misconduct. The sentence included probation and mandatory participation in the community center's restorative justice program. Some officers still whispered about betrayal, but fewer each day. His public apology had filled the town hall. He'd stood at the podium, hands gripping the edges, voice shaking but clear. "I let bias poison my judgment. I chose cruelty over duty. I burned more than a car that night. I burned trust. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking to make it right, whatever that takes." Dale's trial was set for spring. He'd refused all deals, still spitting blame from his cell. On a bright Wednesday morning, Mrs. Evelyn Hart's kitchen buzzed with activity. She and Pastor Green spread papers across her well-worn table, planning the first Rebuild Trust Day. The event list grew. Painting peeling walls at the community center, fixing Mrs. Johnson's broken fence, clearing debris from old Mr. Peterson's yard after the storm. "And the scholarship?" Evelyn asked, passing Pastor Green a fresh cup of coffee. He nodded, sliding over a draft announcement. The Sarah Grant Memorial Scholarship, for students showing exceptional community service and moral courage. Isaiah had approved the name with wet eyes, touching the small photo he kept in his wallet. The day arrived cool and clear. Families streamed into the community center parking lot, carrying paintbrushes, toolboxes, and covered dishes. Children ran between adults, trailing streamers. Maya directed traffic with a smile, her badge catching the morning light. Work teams spread through town like hope with hands. Elderly neighbors watched from porches as young people repaired steps and cleared gutters. The community center's walls transformed, from dingy beige to warm yellow, each stroke erasing old shadows. At noon, Evelyn rang the lunch bell. Tables groaned under casseroles and pies. Isaiah moved through the crowd in his off-duty clothes, shaking hands, listening more than speaking. He paused near the scholarship announcement board, where Sarah's photo smiled next to the words service and courage. An older man who'd been suspicious at that first veterans' breakfast now passed. Isaiah a plate of Evelyn's cornbread. "You're doing good work, Captain," he said gruffly. "Real good work." As the sun began to set, people gathered at the roadside memorial. Wind rustled through late flowers someone had planted. Isaiah stepped forward with a small flag, just as he had that first day. But this time Evelyn's steady presence stood beside him, and Maya's quiet strength anchored his other side. The crowd settled into respectful silence as Isaiah spoke, his voice carrying on the evening air. "We won't be perfect, but we can be better. Together." Heads nodded. A child slipped her hand into her mother's. Someone started humming Amazing Grace, and others joined softly, harmony rising like prayer in the gathering dusk. In that moment under the first stars, the town exhaled. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't. Not because everyone agreed, they didn't. But because truth had made space for hope to grow, and hope was choosing to stay.